Canopy Growth stock is the topic of today's presentation, and you're probably wondering if there's any Canopy Growth news because the stock is up 90% today. So we're going to explain what exactly is happening with CGC stock. So cannabis and space are two of the riskiest investment themes that we cover. Cannabis relies on discretionary spending. It's highly competitive. There's black market threats. So what investors often don't realize is there's a $100 billion black market for cannabis in the United States that's always been there. It works very efficiently. It's a network of connectivity with lots of loyalty between the quote-unquote dealers and their customers. So that needs to be displaced by legal markets. It's not blue ocean. Cost of capital is high. That's because cannabis remains illegal at a federal level, so all eyes are on federal legalization. We believe that U.S. multi-state operators are where the opportunity lies, and we even invested in one so that we'd have a dog in the race. Now, cannabis stocks are going nuts. So I pulled up a few pieces here from Yahoo Finance showing how cannabis ETFs soar after Biden pardon. That was 11 months ago. And 4 months ago, Safe Banking Act resurgence boosts pot ETFs, a new era ahead. So there's always some event that's happening surrounding regulatory risk that impacts cannabis ETFs and stocks. And then this ad here, man finds snake in backyard. Vet can't believe it, the sort of shite that Yahoo Finance publishes these days. So, of course, I clicked on it, and it's a story about a guy who found a snake, and it's not really a snake. And then at the end, it tells you it's fiction. So be real careful about what you click out there. So from our Discord server via MarketWatch, somebody posted this excellent summary. It says the reason that we're seeing lots of hype around cannabis these days is because of three factors here. Rescheduling process. So the FDA's made a recommendation to the DEA, that's the Drug Enforcement Agency in the States, to reschedule cannabis to something nicer. That would certainly help move it towards legalization. We should see that by year end. The second point here, most banks are prohibited from serving cannabis companies, as we said, and that they're trying to push through the Safe Banking Act. That SAFE is short for Secure and Fair Enforcement Act. They say there's been some real progress, and there could be a floor vote next month on this. And then thirdly, state legalization. So key states to watch are Ohio, Florida, and Pennsylvania. If you look at this chart here, this is quite a boost. So you see an asset here that's jumped. It appears to have nearly doubled in price. Well, this isn't a stock. It's actually an ETF, and it's the Advisor Shares Pure U.S. Cannabis ETF. It's really not typical to see an ETF move like that, and it just goes to show how volatile this sector is. Here is a list of the companies in the largest cannabis ETF. It says Pure U.S. Cannabis ETF. The ticker's MSOS. You might ask, where is Canopy Growth? Well, Canopy Growth happens to be a Canadian firm, whilst this ETF, as it says on the tin, targets U.S. So when we look at the opportunity, we've used this chart in a number of past pieces. It shows cannabis sales in 2020. The point to take away from this is that Canadian sales at $3 billion, U.S. legalized sales, let's say they're around $20 billion now, and then the black market, which at that time, and probably still is because it grows, is a $100 billion market. So the real opportunity globally for cannabis investors would be the United States. Now, when we look at a company, we always look for showstoppers. That's an old QA term in quality assurance. Showstoppers were something that you couldn't release your product if this particular issue existed. In other words, showstoppers can't be overlooked. So when we're, as investors, when we find a showstopper, there's no point in going any further. And for Canopy Growth stock, our showstopper is gross margins that aren't positive. And here you can see that for 3 of the past 4 years, and even over the past trailing 12 months, they haven't had a positive gross margin. This is something that we can never look past. If you're selling weed for less than it costs you to procure it, that's not a business. And even though this firm has made some progress towards a positive gross margin, here you can see last quarter's financial highlights. So you see there's minimal revenue growth. There's a positive gross margin up from a negative one the same quarter the year prior. And their cash flows, that's another issue there. They're burning $150 million a quarter there, so they have $571 million left. So this is not a very profitable business, and they're trying to move that needle. And one thing they've pointed out here that's quite interesting, their quarterly gross margin performance would be 18% versus 5% ex bio. What does that mean? Well, Canopy Growth announces purchase of majority stake in BioSteel Sports Nutrition. This was in October of 2019, probably around the last season of cannabis hype, where stocks went through the roof a lot more than you're seeing right now, believe it or not. But at that time, say around that time, Canopy Growth had purchased this sports nutrition and hydration segment, and the idea there was that they were going to inject that with some CBD drinks, so kind of use that as a taking off point for their CBD-based drinks. Well, that never really panned out. You can see here a piece just this summer. It says Canopy Growth faces SEC investigation after BioSteel sales misstatements. So that's a problem. Even prior to that, we wouldn't think that a pure play cannabis company should start getting into other areas. This is similar to what Tilray does and looking at alcohol or drinks or all these different other adjacent components that don't directly relate to their cannabis business. Here you can see where BioSteel on their last investor deck accounts for a significant portion, nearly a third of their revenues. And the second item there below it, stores and Bickle, that would be vaporizer. So that's acceptable, right? So that's something that you can see how it relates to the cannabis theme. But selling sports drinks, that's not something that we're investing in a company for. If it's a cannabis firm, we want to be making money on cannabis. And here you can see Canadian cannabis there at the top is where most their cannabis sales come from. International, it says rest of world cannabis below that. So you're not getting the pure play exposure, and that will change here because they say that they plan to exit BioSteel this year, which is interesting in light of the SEC investigation. The long-term outlook for Canopy Growth, it says consolidation and stabilization in Canadian cannabis as industry matures. Indeed, so that's not an opportunity that we want to dabble in. The growth story is gone. It's now maturing, and we're after growth. And it says here that U.S. federal permissibility opening the world's largest cannabis market. That's what we said, yeah. With Canopy USA platform poised to capitalize. Well, we're going to invest in firms that are already capitalizing, not poised to capitalize. We have 8 multi-state operators. Well, they have since consolidated. Let's say there's 5 or 6 to choose from, and they actually have some proper market share in the United States. So if you're looking at U.S. cannabis, there's a lot better options than Canopy Growth. And it's not the first time that Canopy has seen lots of hype. So here is a chart taken from a piece that we wrote back in 2018 titled Buying Marijuana Stocks in 2018, Is It Too Late? We concluded that what seems most likely is that we're due for a meaningful correction in marijuana stocks. Indeed, that's what happened. And Canopy Growth, which you see there at upwards of a $10 billion valuation, is now somewhere around $1 billion, and that's after all the hype. So we're seeing right now extreme levels of cannabis hype since the start. So this presentation is on September 11th, 2023. It'll be published on the 12th. So as I'm talking, the stock is going up, and when I took this screenshot, it was already up to 53% on the day. Now, when a sector ETF moves 20% in a day, you're in a risky space. And you can see here how stocks, it's not just Canopy Growth, and you may be tempted to think that when you see the stock price moving, but look, ACB is also, that's Aurora Cannabis, is also seeing lots of hype. Price action appears to be part meme, part cannabis hype, probably mostly cannabis hype. The meme element comes from the fact that whenever cannabis stocks seem to get lots of attention. Canopy Growth sees more attention or volatility than the rest of the pack. Forget about the stock. What's the business look like? So when we look at the business, it's not anything we want a part of. They need to get rid of blue steel. It drags on margins. It's not a pure play component of a cannabis company. They need to show consistent positive gross margins with a margin of safety and show some progress in U.S. expansion where all the future growth is. If U.S. represents the biggest opportunity, indeed it does, invest in U.S. MSOs, not Canopy Growth. And, of course, invest in companies, not stocks. You may ask the question, well, should I invest in cannabis? Well, you really need to think about that. And the idea for us, anyways, is to enter a position in anticipation of legalization. The biggest concern being that it might not happen. And the problem that you'll run into is that this is dependent on consumer spending, and the black market will continue putting pricing pressure on the legal market. So you want to have a business that has strong gross margins so they can compete on price. This is an extremely risky space that's probably best avoided even by sophisticated investors. You may say, well, why do we cover it? We cover cannabis because of all the newbies it attracts. And when we've published our cannabis-related pieces over the years, it's attracted a lot of investors. We've been able to put them on the right path and explain to them that this is not something that you should be invested in. If you are invested in Canopy or thinking about it, that means that you're ready to start investing, and that's great. So no YOLO, no FOMO. Take a step back. Start with the basics. If you make the right investment decisions early on, it's going to make you very wealthy. And this old adage we always like to use, it's about time in the market, not timing the market. You need to invest in quality companies and hold them for the long term. Canopy Growth is not one of them. So I'm going to put up another video here that you might want to watch. Before you click that, please click the Nanalyze logo here on the right. Subscribe to our channel. Thanks so much for taking the time to support our work.